Here are some real world data science problems, as well as a tutorial about how you can gain experience building these models, even if you don't have internal data. A really common problem is how do you estimate the effect of some sort of staggered rollout? This could be a feature launch that gets launched in different cities over time, or imagine a company like Waymo that is right now going into one market after another. How do you estimate the impact of these things when the rollouts are staggered over time? So one common approach is to use an event study where we recenter the data, the time series for each one of our like geographic regions or each one of our treated entities to have time equals zero on the day of the event. Okay, great. But you don't have Waymo internal data, right? Or any of these other like marketing data. So how do you do this in real life with publicly available data? The trick is this. We're going to run the exact same models, but instead we're going to do it on something where we have data for, such as stock prices. So let's think of some event that could happen with different companies over time. One example is ex dividend dates, but this could also be anything else like earnings announcements. So the ex dividend date is the first day on which a company, if they are paying dividends, that you are no longer eligible for the forthcoming dividend. And because of that, usually the stock price, according to economic theory, is the stock price should go down on that date. But this is a great example of something that could be like a staggered rollout because these companies they have their dividend dates on different dates. You can see here I just picked like AT&T, their last ex dividend date was on April 10th. Coca-Cola was on June 13th. CVX was on May 19th and so on. And so what we're going to do here, so for each one of those stock ticker symbols, we're going to take the event date and we're going to pull in stock prices before and after that ex dividend date for that company, as well as some stock market indexes such as VOO and VTI and QQQ and DVY. And then we're going to stack them so that the trend variable in this case takes on the value zero specifically on the ex dividend date. So we can see here Procter and Gamble has trend zero on April 21st, and if we go back up, Procter and Gamble April 21st, that was exactly their ex dividend date. We can take this stacked data frame and we can run it in a regression using ordinary least squares prepared like an event study. So in this case, it's our target ticker against some of these stock price indexes, as well as dummies for a few days before the day of the event and a few days after to see how the stock price reacts. And we can see this is the key right here, post zero. We can see that on average, these companies see a stock price decline of just over 1% relative to the performance in these market indexes. And so that's important. Basically, if these indexes were to go down by, let's say the market goes down by 2%, we would expect that if it's an ex dividend date for one of these companies, it would drop by an additional 1%. We can then plot these coefficients. And again, we see this dip right here on the day of the event. But it is actually quite interesting that even prior to the ex dividend date, we were starting to see some declines. And this is interesting because those should be the last dates that someone could come in and still get the dividend that's going to be coming just a few days from there. But it may be that a lot of other investors assume that the price is going to drop on the ex dividend date, and maybe they're selling in advance of that. But going back, the interesting part here is that now you've used publicly available data. You've set up an event study. You've recentered the time series around the events for each one of the treated units, which mimics a staggered rollout. If you're now in a data science interview and you're talking about experience, you can describe your experience with doing this and how it prepares you for estimating the impact of, a staggered brand marketing campaign, for example, or a product launch that goes out region by region.